Good evening. This is Jason Dean, or good morning, I should say. It's about 10 o'clock on a rainy Thursday. It's pretty rainy right now. I have a gig tonight. I'm hoping it will clear up. It's supposed to, so we'll see. Fingers crossed. But anyway, hope everyone's doing good here on social media land, and so, like I said before, I've been trying to do beef up my content as far as my YouTube channel for Film Fanatic. I have, the Facebook page, Film Fanatic, and then also my Instagram page at Main Film Fanatic. And now I have a YouTube channel that's entitled Jason Dean Film Fanatic. So, yeah, and I have a new setup. I've been digging this new setup. I have a microphone, and I've been using my laptop now for these shows. And the last couple of months, I just really hadn't had the time, to a degree or whatnot, to do too many videos. So I have a little bit of time right now. Well, especially the last month or so, I've been able to. My schedule has opened up a lot, and there's been a lot of movies. Like I've said before in the past, I watch a ton of movies all the time. It's my favorite thing to do is to go and sit down at the end of the day, a busy day, and to kind of unwind and decompress from that day by watching a movie. I always find it a real, I don't know, I kind of feel like it's therapy for me. It's a great way to just kind of, forget about what was going on during a day, whether it was good or bad, and just to kind of decompress. It helps relax me and kind of chill me out a little bit. And I'm just a huge fan of them. And there's been so many great films I've been seeing the last couple of months that I've been kind of chomping at the bit to start cranking out some videos and to really kind of up the up the ante with as far as content and all those kinds of things. And especially, I feel like the setup is a lot more professional for what it is. But I appreciate everybody's support. I'm not really doing the Facebook Live videos anymore, just because I feel like the quality on in that format or on that format isn't really all that great. It's okay, but this seems a little bit better, and there's a little bit more creative control over the content, and that you can edit the videos and delete stuff if you need to, and make changes as you go. So again, like I've been saying, there's been so many great films I've been seeing. I've been buying, usually every month I go and I drop a little bit of cash, and I've been buying a lot of Blu-rays, and I've been covering some of those films lately. And then also, just there's been a great crop of films that have been out in the theater. I just did a show yesterday where I covered a really great exploitation movie, Forced Entry, which I just saw from 1976. Super gritty, super underground film, like really obscure film. But I bought it on Blu-ray on a whim, and it's great. And I did a little review, a video for that, and I did a little post for the film itself yesterday. So that's been a lot of fun. So I've been diving deep into that part of my world as far as new purchases, taking some chances, seeing some new ones, seeing some films I saw as a kid, and also seeing all these other underground gems that I had never even heard of before. Forced Entry was one of them. So very, very cool. But I also love I try to keep up on new things that are coming out all the time. And the video that I did yesterday on Forced Entry, I had a little talk about the notion or the idea that, there's not, well, the way I described it before in the video, or yesterday in the video, I called it the grandpa syndrome, where people, and every generation goes through it. It's nothing new. I think it's a little bit different now. I think people try to wave that thing as a flag more now with social media and try to be more judgmental and harsh and critical than ever before because of social media, because people are protected by their screens, so they can kind of just say some kind of vile things, but then they can also be really ruthless. And because of technology, everybody feels that there's a sense of entitlement that, everybody's a critic and that people, uh, you know, can review things, but then if they give say, a negative review of something, they kind of do it in a way that is maybe a little too harsh and a little bit too brutal at times. Some things, yeah, some things deserve that, but I think overall the general consensus with what I've seen on social media is that when somebody tears apart a movie, they go all out to where they're trashing or like almost trash talking the director in the film that they don't like, and it's that's a very different it's a very different climate now, and I think you could still do that. And I think some films, definitely deserve, maybe certain Hollywood films that are so incredibly hyped or have this budget behind them that are just, everywhere, and there's all this hype around it, and then it's an utter disappointment. And I think there's times and a time and a place to, maybe go all out or be really critical of certain things. Case in point, probably the last time I did that, I wouldn't say I trashed it, but I was definitely pretty harsh to a degree just because of the build up and what those films meant to me. Was the last Matrix film. But generally, I try to keep it pretty sensible and respectful. And even that, I tried to keep it as you know, re- respectful of the actors in the film and the director, because I realize how incredibly hard it is to make a film, and the barriers and the obstacles that are in front of those filmmakers. But what I was trying to say was the grandpa syndrome, where basically every generation there's always this thing, and I don't really think that necessarily has anything to do with technology, but there's always a cutoff point where certain people of a certain age group will say, well, they don't make anything, they don't make they don't make them like they used to. They don't. There's nothing good coming out right now. Whether it's new bands or new films that are coming out, what have you. And like I had mentioned too, I typically always go back to older films from like the 70s and 80s. That's probably my favorite period. I always go back to that, and I love all kinds of films, but my favorites are definitely in that time period. Whether, and lately it's really been horror, science fiction, exploitation. That's pretty much my favorite style of filmmaking. But again, I love all kinds of movies. So, but one of the things that I do is I try to really stay up on new stuff that's coming out, because I feel like now I've seen some incredible movies, like new releases, just within the last couple of weeks. Some in the theater, and I've been really surprised by the quality. So I always feel like that argument with the whole grandpa syndrome is just, it is what it is. I don't, I, there's always going to be a rash of movies or a batch of movies that come out that are going to be maybe not up to par. And, that's kind of the whole reason of, or one of the creative factors behind like all of the exploitation movies and all the slasher movies that came out that I love so much and that I review a lot on the show, was that they were basically like kind of copying, you know, or modeling it after certain films that might be considered like Hollywood blockbusters that were successful in that particular genre. And they're basically making a lower budget of that. Case in point, like there's a movie that I'll do eventually, which is a really great kind of sleazy grindhouse movie called Grizzly. And I just absolutely love that movie, and I'll do a show on that at some point. But that was basically a ripoff of Jaws, Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Incredible movie. But there's something about this other movie that was an attempt to just rip it off, and it just, it does not have the budget or the acting, the the caliber of the actors is just not there, the writing, and it's really bad. But then it has this thing where because it goes in such a weird, low budget direction, it seems to really work, and I really love that film. Another example is The Car. That's a movie too. That was another movie that came out in the 70s. That was another ripoff of Jaws. Super low budget, total like exploitation film based off of that movie, and I love that movie so much. So there's all kinds of examples of that, and so that was I feel like creatively by a lot of these directors from the 70s and even 60s and 80s that were technically maybe not as skilled as more like highbrow directors. They still had a vision, and they still kind of curated these ideas in a really strange way with a low budget, but there's still a real beauty and charm and fun aspect to them. But getting back, there's been so many great films by new directors that I just feel like that whole grandpa syndrome thing is just I don't even really pay attention to it anymore. It's just whatever. I feel like there's so many great directors right now. I did a show on the new Jordan Peele movie Nope, which is a fantastic movie. I just saw that in the theater. So you have directors like Jordan Peele, one of the just totally one of the most innovative guys out there right now. You have Robert Eggers. I've done shows on him. I did a review on The Northman. He's just fantastic. He did The Witch, and The Lighthouse, which is a fantastic movie. The Northman is fantastic. I got to see that in the theater. Great body of work for his career. He's only got 3 movies out, but just really high level stuff. And also Ari Aster, who is one of my favorites too, and he's just an incredible director. Hereditary, Midsummer, just fabulous director, and he has a new movie coming out, I believe, really shortly. So I'm really excited to see that, and I think it stars Joaquin Phoenix. And then another director I really really love is Denis Villeneuve, who's a Canadian director who just recently did a remake of Dune, and which was just an amazing film. And he also did Sicario, and also the Blade Runner sequel, The Arrival, Prisoners. Just an amazing director, and he's a new guy, a very contemporary director. And this brings me to this show is all about this movie, The Black Phone, starring Ethan Hawke. This movie had been something on my The Black Phone had been on my radar for quite a while. I tried pretty hard to see it in the theater, but it didn't seem to be in the theater for all that long. But it just came out on DVD, so I missed it in the theater, unfortunately. And I just watched it the other night. And The Black Phone, which stars Ethan Hawke, who I've always been a huge fan of, and he's one of those great actors that can be in real low budget films, almost, and in things that are maybe considered to be like art house films, action films, what have you. And even if the movie isn't necessarily so good, or maybe even kind of bad, he's really great. He's so versatile, and I feel like his role in this new horror film, The Black Phone, is just exceptional. And it was directed by Scott Derrickson, and Scott Derrickson is really talented. I feel like he's made he made the first Doctor Strange movie, which I think is really great. It's a Marvel movie, and also Sinister, which also stars Ethan Hawke, which I think was one of the best horror films that's come out in like the last 10 years. Just amazing. I remember the first time I saw Sinister, it really legitimately creeped me out. And I have a high threshold for violence and what have you, and it usually takes a lot for certain things to kind of get under my skin. But that movie did especially when I first saw it, and it's a really great film, Sinister, Ethan Hawke. And then Scott Derrickson also made The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is actually a very cool movie. Pretty underrated, I feel. It's a film that's different from his other movies because it's like a found footage kind of thing, like in the vein of Blair Witch Project, and it's The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Really great film, really great atmosphere, super creepy, really low budget, but very good. And that movie came out during the time when there was a bunch of like possession movies, or to a degree modern knockoff versions of The Exorcist. And there was a whole slew of those that came out, but I felt like The Exorcism of Emily Rose was definitely probably the best one out of those movies. And it kind of got lost. I think it got lost in the shuffle, but that's a movie, and I've been, interested, been thinking about that movie, and it's something I want to see again. So he's made some great movies. I think he is definitely somebody to watch. So he directed this. This just came out, The Black Phone, and I just saw it last night or yesterday, the day before yesterday. And the cast is just amazing. Ethan Hawke. It's got Mason Thomas or Mason Thames, who's the child actor in the film. It's got Miguel Savarez Mora, who, and a lot of these actors I'd never heard of before, and I was really impressed, to say the least. Madeline McGraw is great. Jeremy Davis. Yeah, and I feel like I said I've been a huge fan of Ethan Hawke for most of his career, and I feel like this might be his best role. He plays one of the creepiest like villains I've ever seen on film in recent time. In recent times, and I feel like I'm a huge fan of the iconic horror films, especially like the masked, killers, say like Michael Myers, Leatherface, Jason Voorhees, and also just iconic characters like Freddy Krueger. And I feel like Ethan Hawke's role in this film, and he plays this character called the Grabber, is right up there. And I feel like he has this presence on stage that's just iconic and really incredibly creepy. And his character is basically he's called the Grabber, and he's basically he kidnaps children, and he's like a child murderer. And throughout the movie, he wears these various different styles of masks, and you don't really see Ethan Hawke's face in the film really at all, maybe for a split second. And the whole like design of that is just pretty incredible. Some of the best designs I've seen for like as far as like creating this aesthetic and creating this real powerful imagery that really gets under your skin and leaves this impression. And his character in it is just so complicated and so creepy. He shows all these when he's in these various scenes, he is always changing his mask. He's always wearing a different kind of a setup, and he's always in this different mood and this different kind of mindset. And he's expressing these different parts of his emotions, and he's very complicated and it's super messed up, but so creepy. Again, I feel like his whole thing is some of the most some of the like the best like iconic imagery that I've seen in quite a few years. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like I've seen some people review The Black Phone, and they were big fans of the film, and they were saying how they really felt like they wouldn't be surprised that you know, come Halloween this year, that people will be wearing that mask because it's kind of got that vibe of like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. It's got that iconic thing that will be, kind of imprinted in your memory after you see it. And I totally agree. The whole movie takes place in the 70s, and it basically is centered around these kids who get abducted. And there's also a very cool, although it's not really, it's real subtle, but it's definitely got a very heavy duty supernatural element to where as you get more into the story, there's definitely that aspect. So it has like a supernatural thing, but the initial thing is it's about a film about like a serial killer, more or less, and it's set in kind of a reality. It's set in the 70s, which is really great. It's got all this great music. The music in this film is just incredible. It's the same writer and composer of The Lighthouse, also by Robert Edgers. Um, and I believe the same composer was also on Sinister, or involved with it. But the whole film is set in the 70s. It just has this, it's got this thing about it that you really feel like you're transported back to that time. It's got all this incredible music. And but initially the film feels like it's a like a, like a crime story, or like it's about this investigation to try to track this killer down. And then it has on the side, on the sidelines, this like supernatural element that eventually kind of moves more into the center as the film progresses. But yet it still has this cool balance of where it feels like it's still set in reality. And it has this fabulous way of building this tension throughout the entire film. Um, and it has some really great twists and turns. And some of the child acting, the actors in it, these child actors that I mentioned, are just fantastic. They play such incredibly complicated roles. The father of one of the girls is just incredibly complicated. And at one point, well, I found myself when I was watching the film, the father was portrayed by Jeremy Davis, who is a actor who's been around for quite a few years. Really great actor, a great character actor. He plays the father, and it's a real interesting thing because there's aspects of it where you really despise him, and he's like kind of a disgusting person. But then he's also so complicated, and there's all these different colors in his character, and you kind of almost in this weird way. I found myself kind of almost as the film went on with him, even though he's like this completely vile person, you see that he has all these different shades, and he's really complicated and messed up. And found myself having a bigger degree or developing this empathy towards him. It was really strange, and I kind of felt like I felt strange having empathy for this kind of a character because of how vile he is and kind of gross. But that's the thing about really great filmmaking, is that you can have a character, and then you have this exposition, and they can show these different sides to his personality, and there's certain things that you might be drawn to or repulsed by, but then you might have empathy towards him. And I feel like that kind of keeps the story in this realistic light, because it's very complicated, and people are complicated. So it has this very realistic vibe to it, and so it really pulls you in as a viewer, I feel like, because the writing for this film is just fantastic. Um, this will definitely be one I will see, or that I will get on Blu-ray at some point. It would have been great to definitely see in the theater, but again, I totally recommend this movie, The Black Phone, starring Ethan Hawke. It just came out, just left the theaters, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago. So yeah, one of the best new horror films I've seen in quite a long time. So yeah, thanks again. If you get a chance, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we will see you next time. Peace.